Okay, so welcome to everybody who's joined the call this afternoon for what is the first in the series of what we hope will be a monthly set of virtual seminars in skills and techniques. And these are being organised by the Mineralogical Society of the UK and Ireland. And my name is Sally Gibson, and I'm the president of this organisation. And I'm going to be chairing this afternoon's session. So whilst we've been waiting for people to join, I'm aware that there's lots of people on the call who are not based in the UK and Ireland, which is absolutely not, doesn't prohibit you from being a member of the MinSoc. We welcome people from all over, and in fact, we have a strong international contingent. Um, but I'm sure that there's quite a few of you who may not be familiar with what the MinSoc does. And so before I introduce this afternoon's presenter, I just wanted to highlight who we are and some of the things that we do. So, um, I'm just going to show you two slides, I promise, no more than this before I introduce Matt to you. So there are really two main things that we do. One is that we publish journals, and you may be familiar with these. These are international journals. They're published by Cambridge University Press. And we also have books. Some of you may be familiar with Dear Howie and Zussman, Rock Forming Minerals, or DHZ as it's commonly known. The second thing that we're involved in is a series of special interest groups. Kevin, could you put the next slide up, please?
Sure. Oops.
So the Mineralogical Society is we're like an umbrella organization, and 8 special interest groups that are listed on the slide here: applied mineralogy, clay minerals, environmental mineralogy, geochemistry, geomicrobiology, metamorphic studies, mineral physics, and volcanic and magmatic studies. So these are sort of subgroups that are within the Mineralogical Society, and they organize lots of events, conferences, field trips, and things like that. So I just wanted to sort of inform people who are not familiar with the Mineralogical Society that these are our activities, and you can find out much more about these on our website. Okay. So the Mineralogical Society is hosting this new virtual series on skills and techniques in order to bring us together, the wider community, and share our knowledge and experience. And this is on a huge range of different topics. And I'll tell you more about those at the end of today's session. But today, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Matt Streets. Matt is an industrial microbiologist, and he's been involved in this for 14 years, so he's got significant experience. Matt currently leads the microbial services division at Rawwater, where he specializes in microbial oil field reservoir souring. His work includes both forecasting and modeling, as well as conducting cutting-edge lab-based simulations in extreme environments using high-pressure bioreactors, which sounds really exciting. Matt collaborates closely with industry and helps to develop technical solutions for tackling microbiological biofouling challenges in the energy sector. And in addition to his role at Rawwater, so in addition to his industrial role, Matt is pursuing a part-time PhD in environmental geomicrobiology at the University of Manchester. And so he's absolutely perfectly placed for sharing his knowledge and experience on the transition from academia into industry. So Matt's going to give a sort of 45-minute presentation, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end. But if you want to paste some of those questions into the chat as we go along, we'll come back to those at the end. So please don't hesitate to do this. So over to you, Matt. Welcome.
Thank you, Sally. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, from wherever you're dialing in around the globe. Thanks to Kevin and to Sally for that very kind introduction. And thank you all for attending today's session. It's really great to have so many of you here on this call for, as Sally said, the first seminar in this skills and training series. So as stated, my name is Matt Streets, and I'm delivering today's talk as the Industrial Liaison Officer for one of those special interest groups within MinSoc, the Geomicrobiology Network. So during today's session, I'm going to give you a bit more background into who I am and my experience within industry. I'll then touch on my role within the Geomicrobiology Network before we delve into the meat and the heart of this presentation, which is some of the skills to focus on as an early career researcher, and some things that I believe are less important or where possible should be avoided, like those pitfalls to avoid. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some conclusions before, as Sally said, opening up for a short question and answer session. So I take you all the way back to 2010. In that year, in that summer, I'd recently completed my undergraduate degree in microbiology at the University of Nottingham. And at the time, I was really exploring opportunities in both academia and industry, and really trying to decide where I wanted to spend my next few years. I'd been offered a PhD in crop microbiology at the university, which I thought it'd be great to stay in the city, stay in the University of Nottingham for another 4 years or so. But after taking on board some advice from existing PhD students, I decided that that particular area of microbiological research wasn't a real passion of mine. So I decided to leave academia that summer and join a small company based just outside of Manchester, who were doing some very interesting research in the area of geomicrobiology. And this company was Rawwater, and still is Rawwater. It's a research consultancy company where we support major players in the energy sector to better understand problematic biofouling, problematic microbiology. A lot of this is to do with microbial sulfide or H2S production in oil field reservoirs. Rawwater's USP at the time, and still is, the operation of high pressure bioreactor systems where we were growing, where they were growing at the time, diverse microbial communities to evaluate these bacterial responses under different treatment regimes under high pressure and high temperature. And this seemed really quite different from the areas of medical, food, crop microbiology I'd been exposed to in my undergraduate days. But I found, as many as you will do, that so many skills transfer seamlessly from one role to another. And this was a particular role in industry, which that was the case. And really, in these first 3 years at Rawwater, this is where I lived, very much hands-on in the lab, generating data for our customers and client base, conducting small in-house projects where we were interested in exploring within the company. And really, after those first 3 years of effectively another bachelor's degree in the lab in high pressure bioreactor operation, I went from this and I effectively graduated internally to a more senior position within the company, in which I was one of 2 senior team members who took on more project management roles. And really, this enabled me to acquire skills that went beyond those 4 walls in the laboratory, which range from procurement of scientific and non-scientific equipment, delving into or dipping my toe into the world of sales and marketing, proposal generation, data interrogation, report writing, a whole host of things, including obviously client liaison and discussions at various conference attendance. So I'd say that this period of time within Rawwater was where I gathered much of my experience and soft skills in the working environment. In 2021, I was successful in landing the head of division role in the scientific team within the company. And in this position, my role further evolved to kind of lead and manage the business operations for the division in order to achieve company goals that were both market and finance driven. There were additional emphasis on developing new business and overseeing divisional financial accounts, which I would report back to the board on a quarterly basis. And naturally, this also involved increased leadership and personnel responsibility. So this kind of progression enabled me to take on more opportunities, roles, and responsibilities to learn. And as raised previously, interesting enough, I should raise here that in 2021 is where I embarked on a part-time PhD at the University of Manchester under the supervision of Professor John Lloyd and Professor Sophie Nixon. which is certainly keeping me busy outside of my full-time role at Rawwater. But hopefully, just mentioning something like that, hopefully shows that if you do decide to leave academia, that door is never closed behind you. Tonight it can be quite fluid, the transition from one area to another within academia and industry. And then the final slide here is early this year, I became the principal scientist for the company, where my quest is ultimately to spread awareness and to connect with companies all over the world who could really benefit from Rawwater's leading services in problematic microbiology. So just last month, I presented a technical paper over in Kuala Lumpur, and then a few weeks later, I attended an academic conference on extremophilic microorganisms in Greece. So it's taking me around the world at the moment, which is really exciting. And as you can imagine, during these 14 years in industry, I've had the opportunity to work with a wide range of scientists with varying backgrounds in both academia and industry, which I find is a really nice place to sit in between those two disciplines. And really, over the last 2.5 years, my role within the Geomicrobiology Network has been to try and better bridge the gap between academia and industry, both from a knowledge and personnel transfer point of view. So just a couple of slides just to introduce our special interest group, which has been going for the last 10 years. We at the Geomicrobiology Network sit really at the interface between geology and the biological sciences, whether it be astrobiology or deep in the biosphere, where we try to encourage and promote collaborative work in these areas of expertise. And ultimately, our goal is to support the people on this call, the researchers in this field and beyond, under the MinSoc umbrella, whether it be to embark on an exciting career in academia or test the water in industry. And although I appreciate that many of you may not be geomicrobiologists, it is the early career researchers which we want to support as you're starting out on your journey. This can range from events such as our kind of annual research in progress meeting that we host within the Geomicrobiology Network, which is a really good platform and a good example of a platform which encourages early career researchers to share their latest findings and research in front of a room of their peers. And also from events such as today's seminar. So the transition from academia to industry, how different is it? How different are these beasts? Well, firstly, I think it's fair to say a sweeping statement that both are consistently seeking high-skilled graduates who understand basic research principles and are interested in continued learning in whatever role they take. So a lot of this talk is based on my own experience, and it may differ from person to person, but from my experience, a career in industry very much involves working together in a group to drive the success of a business ultimately. Now, obviously, different businesses have different metrics and different definitions of success, but often it relates to growth or expansion and/or profit. And from my experience in dealing with academia in the last few years, I think it's the emphasis is often more on improving and understanding fundamental research and publishing those findings, which ultimately benefit the scientific community, which obviously includes industry from an applied research point of view. Now, despite some of these differences, it's probably no surprise to you all that there are significant overlaps in skills and knowledge application. So here ultimately are my top 10 skills for early career researchers, which are in no particular order. Again, this is by no means a definitive list. This is really based on my experience and interactions with various teams over the last 14 years of industry. And as I said, I should mention here that many of you will have had experience in building on many of these skills already. So these aren't 10 new skills you have to learn from scratch. They are really transferable from academia to industry or vice versa. And all of these you will have some experience with. It's just really from a personal level, focusing on which areas of development do you feel you'd be best to attack first. So I'll run through these individually and give you a bit more insight into from an industry angle how these are useful. So the first is problem solving. It really, as in academia, it requires that methodological approach where you identify root causes, you generate potential solutions, and evaluate their effectiveness in are essential steps to this. So something that we're all very much used to on this call. I guess in industry, researchers can often face slightly different challenges that may differ somewhat to academic scenarios. For example, ability to solve problems efficiently is crucial in a fast-paced environment where time and in particular resources are limited. When a client is expecting something, they need to have it based on their time schedule. So it's applying both creative and I guess logical thinking to develop these types of solutions that are not only innovative but also practical in industrial projects. They can also extend beyond technical issues. It may be you may also be adept to resolving interpersonal conflicts, overcoming organizational barriers, depending on which companies you work for. I guess a lot of this is very similar to what people experience within academia, and hence, again, me stating that it's something we're all used to. There's certain barriers that are with respect to kind of organization size and efficiencies. But yeah, being able to work under pressure, ensuring challenges are met with resilience and solution orientated mindset, I guess, is a nice way of putting it. Second is communication. This is such a broad topic, but it's kind of, I would say it's one of the most crucial skills in transitioning from academia to industry. I think researchers must be able to clearly articulate complex ideas to a range of audiences, including technical teams, management teams, stakeholders with varying levels of expertise. And I think this includes the ability to write those, detailed technical reports, which will go to the people who need to know exactly what you've done. Give persuasive presentations to demonstrate your capabilities, your company's capabilities, as well as your personal capabilities, and really collaborate effectively in meetings. I think it comes back to the next point I have is teamwork, and it's not just about delivering the information, but it's also involves active listening and ensuring that other people in the room fully understand the message that you're conveying. So they're not just listening to you; they're hearing what you're saying. And I guess also developing the skill of adapting your communication style depending on the audience is something I touched on just now. Whether I guess while detailed scientific language might be suitable for a technical team, and senior management or clients might require a bit more concise, results-focused approach. One good example is the type of presentation I would give as an industrial microbiologist working in the energy sector. I would deliver a very different presentation to a like-minded industrial microbiologist relative to delivering a presentation about oil field microbiology to a corrosion scientist or a reservoir engineer. It's choosing your slide deck appropriately and your terminology to fit the audience, and that real strong communication ensures that not only research findings but also your strategies of how to tackle a challenge or a problem are aligned with your business goals, but also with clients' business goals as well. It all feeds into that collaborative work mentality. Third, I've really touched on teamwork already. I think this collaborative work is essential in the industrial setting where interdisciplinary teams are often required to achieve project objectives. So I think when I've had some experience within academia, you can have very collaborative teams for some projects, and sometimes research within academia can sometimes be more solitary. I think this is where industry really relies heavily on teamwork to integrate those diverse skill sets and expertise to attack a challenge. Working alongside whether it's engineers or product developers or marketers or other professionals, that's what really makes teamwork a key skill for success for me. And I think being an effective team player means understanding different roles, contributing your expertise and supporting the team's overall goal. And I think sometimes working lots of academic institutes are very good at this when working with other departments or even schools within your own academic institute to further your research, your group's research, can provide real hands-on experience of this type of collaboration in the academic environment. Fourth, we have networking. It's not a phrase that I like the sound of. I think it always has connotations of business people trying to schmooze, wine and dine, but I've stuck with it because it's a word that we all recognize. But really, it's about building and maintaining those professional relationships through networking. I think it is crucial for career progression in industry. Networking really opens up those opportunities for collaborations, partnerships, and where necessary, career development. So whether it's attending conferences or joining professional associations, or whether it's joining something like MinSoc or a special interest group, or leveraging platforms such as LinkedIn, Professionals Network, it really helps researchers to stay ahead on industry trends, share knowledge and connect with key players in the field. And you never know what could come from a discussion over a cup of coffee. In an industrial context, I think it also helps researchers understand the market demands, anticipating customer needs and identifying potential collaborators in your workspace. And I think really it provides I guess access to a broader range of resources, advice and mentorship for project, business and career growth. So being proactive in building that professional network, I think, is essential skill for long-term success in the industry. Attending events, whether they're within your academic institute or further afield where possible, joining professional bodies and societies. I think this type of exposure pays dividends in the long run. Fifth, we have project management. So in industry, the ability to manage projects effectively is a high sought after skill. And I think researchers often oversee various stages of product development, testing and process involvement. And I think, this project management skill is crucial to ensure that all tasks are really completed on time and within scope, whether it involves clear objectives setting and ensuring you have clear timelines, managing those resources and communicating a process to your line manager and necessary stakeholders. So I think researchers must stay obviously organized, delegate tasks appropriately and monitor risks throughout a project life cycle. I think many of you will be doing that if you're conducting final year studies in a bachelor's or master's programs, postdoc and PhD. So I think mastering project management techniques really helps to ensure that projects are delivered successfully on time and ideally within budget. So having good experience of that, whether it's from a larger project that you're working on collectively within your group, or whether it's your own individual project, which you are the sole bearer of, them, they're really good experiences, I would say. I'd say critical thinking really, I think, is ultimately it's the backbone to lots of things, but especially in decision making with respect to industrial working. As researchers, we must evaluate evidence, identify trends, and make judgments based on incomplete or complex data. So much like in academia, this involves questioning mindset where assumptions are challenged, hypotheses are rigorously tested, and solutions are evaluated for their long-term viability. And I think in industry, where decisions are often have financial and or operational consequences, then it's bringing on that additional complexity with respect to the critical thinking to assess risks and also benefits very carefully for both the company you're working for, but also the client market that you're supporting. I guess unlike academia, where research may focus more on fundamentals a lot of the time, industry requirements applying kind of critical thinking to solve real world problems with ideally immediate impact. I'm speaking from kind of my own experience within Rawwater. If a client has a headache, they will come to us, and we can run a study which is 2 or 3 months long or up to 12 months long, but we can give them data which can feed into their multiple lines of evidence for them to make a real world change to, for example, reduce the amount of chemistry they're using to control problematic microbiology. Then that, I personally find that quite satisfying, in that we're making those applied research, returning that into solutions for real world problems. And I think this skill really ensures that decisions are informed, they're practical, and they align with the organization's overall goals, whether it's the company you work for and or the company you are supporting as a client. So this is where things like case study competitions or industry sponsored workshops as an academic can really prove your innovative side and your innovation solution proposals to make real world changes. I think a nice example of this. Next is time management. I don't mean, when I say time management, I don't mean whether you can turn up at the right time and clock on at 8 or 9 a.m. in the morning. This is really it's all about deadlines. Effective time management is vital for industry. So where deadlines are often strict and client driven, it's adhering to them and minimizing any slip in scope or time frames. So I think researchers, really, it's important for them to manage time effectively and efficiently, to balance various responsibilities, whether it's research, meetings, report writing, client interactions, and ensuring that you have a good idea of how to prioritize tasks, setting realistic goals and not taking on too much, in other words, and avoiding procrastination, which we all fall foul of, are crucial strategies to stay on top of multiple projects and meeting multiple deadlines. I guess time management in industry requires that understanding of how to allocate resources, so not just time, but also financial resources as well, and the effects of the most critical tasks that drive the progress. So I guess gaining experience and confidence in using, whether it's planning software like Microsoft Project, can be valuable, and there are other ways in which you can manage time effectively. But having good examples of that, if you wanted to transition from academia to industries, is a really good way of showing that you appreciate that. I wouldn't say the client's always right, but the client's needs come first a lot of the time. In an industry setting, I think managing large volumes of data effectively is crucial for making informed decisions. As we all know, researchers must ensure data is collected and stored and organized systematically, with an emphasis on accuracy and accessibility, I would say. So it often requires compliance with data standards and regulations when it comes to industry, making sure that data management is a critical skill, not only for operational success, but also legal and ethical reasons. So very similar, very nicely aligned with how many of you will be working within academia as it stands. I think it goes beyond the organization though, and it also involves analyzing and interpreting data to derive actionable insights. So we need to understand as researchers how to leverage software tools for data analysis, ensuring that findings are reproducible and they can be shared with stakeholders, again, in a clear and understandable format, depending on what your audience is. And I think having experience with industry standard tools can really help here when it comes to data management. From an analytical skills point of view, I think, again, this is one of my top 10 essential skills that I would look for in someone moving into industry. It's essential really to break down those complex problems, especially when it comes to real world problems where you have multiple factors feeding in to a certain environment and data sets in order to draw meaningful conclusions, basically. So I think researchers really applying these skills to interpret data, identify patterns, and assess the effectiveness of various procedures and strategies, I think is important within industry. These insights really help to, I'd say, improve operations and optimizing performance and drive innovation for whether it's a product or a service. And again, much of this is very transferable from academia, which I think will be good news to you all. I think researchers must also be able to connect their analytical insights to broader business objectives. So, as I mentioned before, as I've gone from a solely lab-driven role to then spend less and less time in the lab as a scientist as I've progressed in my career, it's not only taking on kind of those technical aspects of data, but it's the commercial implications. So, having kind of a strong analytical skills enables researchers to translate data into strategic recommendations, whether it's for our department, whether it's for the company, whether it's for a client. And it can really drive and influence whether it's product development, innovation, marketing, and other key business functions. So you start to open up a world of that initially, if you take me back to 2010, I would have found quite daunting, but that natural progression and understanding that actually I have got all of these skills already. It's just I may need to work more in this area relative to this area, and everyone is different. And I think that's one of the key messages to take away from this as well. Experience, experience, experience. So I guess working on projects that require complex data interpretation and translation is really valuable here, and maybe easier for some than others, depending on whether your background is data science or not. But that's where having these collaborative efforts to work with friends, contacts within or outside of your university and academic position can, again, really pay dividends. Last but not least, we've got budget management. So I think managing budgets is an important skill in industry, as financial constraints often dictate the scope and direction of projects. I know, speaking from experience, having to be a bit flexible, a bit nimble with regards to new projects that come on board, and then scopes change partway through. It's having kind of that problem solving, critical thinking, and also budget management hat on. So I think researchers really need to understand how to allocate funds effectively, ensuring that those resources are used effectively without compromising, one, the quality of the project, and two, the timeline of the project. Whether it's from a planning point of view, tracking expenses, adjusting financial strategy, these are all kind of some of them sound a bit like buzzwords, but I can guarantee that many of you will have had experience with these, or such as taking on things like whether it's a financial responsibility for a small research project within your group, or handling travel grants is a really good way of gaining experience in this area, I would say. And I think having kind of that experience, you can then build on justifying budget requests and cost overruns to senior management. I think being able to be responsible for those is a very good thing to do when those problems arise. So yeah, I think, like I said, these are my top 10 skills to work on, I think, as an early career researcher, from what I've experienced over the last 14 years, and all of which I think makes a really good, well-rounded candidate to successfully transition from academia over to industry. And as I said, if you do think about transitioning over from academia to industry, that door is never closed. It can be quite fluid, and there's some really big advantages of sitting somewhere in the middle, where you have contacts within industry, you have contacts within academia, and the two sometimes don't talk as well as they could do. Sometimes sitting somewhere in the middle can be really beneficial. So now I thought a few things to avoid, and so this was something that when we were reviewing the presentation internally prior to today's meeting, I think it was Kevin said, "Oh, I think highlighting some of the certain pitfalls to ensure that smooth transition would be key." And I've taken him up on the challenge, and I think he was absolutely right. I think lots of these things are really clear, and some are easier said than done. So starting with easy stuff, plagiarism, for example, we all know that can damage credibility, halt career progress. So maintaining that kind of academic integrity is absolutely essential. I guess similarly, avoiding mentorship can really limit your growth. As mentors, they really offer valuable guidance and industry insights. So having a good mentor or two around you to help guide you to bounce ideas off is a really valuable thing, I would say. I think expanding your professional circle beyond your immediate contacts is critical. Again, that word networking, it really opens up new opportunities and collaborations, which are vital for career development and further your understanding in a specific area. I guess on a personal level, what I always like to highlight is early career researchers, as well as old career researchers. We really must be mindful of our own well-being. I think that's really important. I think burnout is a common issue across all industry, across all academia, and it's often caused by taking on too much work or striving for perfection. So setting realistic expectations, I think, is key. I think constantly working extra hours can lead to fatigue and decreased productivity, while I guess neglecting personal life or and importantly your mental health can result in long-term dissatisfaction, whether you're in academia or in industry. So I think it's important not to also dismiss advice from fellow early career researchers or the more experienced community. They can offer helpful, insightful tips and support you with their own experiences. And I guess finding a balance, seeking support, and pacing yourself are essential for long-term success. So I've got a very short, it's just a short 1-minute video here that I'd like to share with you before we conclude this talk. It's by someone called Simon Sinek. He's an inspirational speaker who deals a lot with business leadership. And I think the message that he will deliver over the next minute summarizes my previous point about workload, irrespective of whether you stay in academia or make the transition to industry, is really poignant. So I'm hoping someone, Kevin or Sally, please speak up if you can't hear the sound after I press go.
There's this great story of two lumberjacks, and every morning they start chopping wood at the same time, and every day they stop chopping wood at the same time. And every day, one of the lumberjacks disappears for about an hour in the middle of the day, and every day he chops more wood than the other lumberjack. This goes on for months. Then finally, the one who works all day stops and says, I have to ask you, every day we start at the same time. Every day we stop at the same time. Every day you disappear for an hour in the middle of the day. Every day I work more hours than you, and every day you chop more wood than me. Where do you go for that hour?
Yeah.
And the other lumberjack looks up and says, oh, I go home and sharpen my axe. And so I'm a great believer in taking breaks. I'm a great believer in turning off. When you have a weekend or a week off, turn off. Obviously there's work to do sometimes, and sometimes it's imperfect. That's okay. But where we literally have never taken a vacation, I think that's unhealthy.
Yeah. So I guess really in conclusion for this initial seminar talk for the series, I think the transition from academia to industry can vary widely in both kind of how you transition, how that comes about, but also kind of from academia into a wide range of different industries. I think it can vary widely. And there can certainly be key people within your academic institutes that can no doubt provide further guidance on this matter. And I'd say, never forget your existing contacts, whether it's friends, families, peers who either work in industry or have already made the leap. Speak to them and see what opportunities, what would they recommend. And as I stated earlier in this talk, there are many ways in which you can prepare yourself now, so that depending on when or if you do want to start exploring the opportunities in the industry, you'll be much better, well equipped. So I know I've been speaking for 36 minutes. So this is the final slide of this seminar presentation. Just like to thank you all again for joining and sticking around, and hopefully you'll be able to all go away with at least one bit of useful information that you've taken from today's session. I think one final thing before I hand back over to Sally is that if you're interested in joining the geomicrobiology community, please feel free to get in touch. I've shamelessly put a QR code on the screen, which would send you to our LinkedIn page for the Geomicrobiology Network. And that's where over the last year and a half, we've been trying to encourage academia and industry to kind of engage a bit more on that professional social media platform. And yeah, as I said, if anyone wants to reach out with any additional questions which go beyond the Q&A, I'm happy to take them via email. My email address is down here at the bottom. But with that, I'd like to thank you for listening, and happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Matt. That was a great presentation, really insightful, and we really value you sharing your knowledge and your experience. And I think, you know, many of us can recognize having perhaps some of those key 10 skills, but perhaps there are others that we don't really sort of fully appreciate how useful they are in industry as well as academia.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's really important for people to tell us this, to remind us that we have developed these skills, you know,
Yeah.
being in academia, but it takes somebody like you to you know, to come on a call like this and say, look, it is possible. You have these skills, you've developed them, and if you haven't, then there's scope to do it when you
Absolutely.
get that.
I would totally agree. I think there's lots of opportunities within academia. Like I said, those just gonna flick back to those 10 here. Yeah, everyone will have had some experience to a greater or lesser extent in these top 10 key skills that I pulled out. And it's just kind of stepping back, seeing the woods for the trees, and saying, oh no, I have good examples of where I've kind of project managed or have critical thinking. And it's just, maybe you might say, well, maybe I don't go to enough of these free events that the academic institutes are putting on. And that's where I could increase kind of my networking, speak to peers, speak to more experienced or senior academics, and see what are their interests, where are they looking within the market. It really just, there's always a life is always about developing, and if you can get 1% better every day, then I think that's a good thing to aim for, irrespective of which one you're trying to tackle at any one time. So yeah.
That's great. So, Matt, I can see lots of things are coming in the chat, and I'm going to find
Okay.
it hard to keep up with all of these. So I'll
Okay.
just go down them in the order that they've come in. So there's one from Frankie Butler. So, are extracurricular, non-work related, research related things considered, such as sports teams, etc., displaying that you have life balance? How so? Just to interrupt here, I thought it was so important you put up that slide about the don'ts as well. That was
Yes.
great, Matt.
Yeah, I think that was a really good point from Kevin, because I think with the don'ts, I'd say a lot of the time, if we're all brutally honest with ourselves, it's kind of do what I say, not do what you see I do, basically. So I know that often I think when I started out in 2010, 2011, I would definitely class myself as a perfectionist in kind of lots of aspects of work that I would conduct. And I think the longer that you're doing something, the longer you realize, actually, these roles and responsibilities, I've got quite a bit on here. I need to do this to the best of my ability, but I don't need to spend hours of making sure that T is completely perfect or that I is completely dotted as it should be. I think the combination of that and not taking on too much. But I think that's a really good question. I think that absolutely leads to questions around in kind of when it comes to the interview process, how do you want to come across to the person at the other side? And I think depending on, I'd like to think it's not the case, but I do think it depends on what type of company are you interviewing for example, if you want to go into industry. The one thing I would always say to people is you just have to remind yourself at the end of the day, the person you're speaking to is just a regular person. They are not a robot. They want to connect on a personal level. And if you get that connection, they will remember you. And to put it really blankly, something that takes me back to when I first went and had a brief interview with a professor at the University of Nottingham. When I was looking around the university, I walked into their office, quite daunting at the age of 17, 18, and they said, "Oh, how are Bordeaux Crusaders doing at the moment?" Which was the football team I played for at the time. And that showed that they had properly read my application. They broke the ice straight away. And I think having those extra curricular activities shows that, look, I do enjoy my work. I've researched the company. I know what it's all about, but these are the things I like to do on the side. And this is what makes me I don't want to say a proper person, but a well-rounded individual. I would always look at that very favorably, I think.
That's great. Thanks, Matt. So the next question comes from Hira Bain. When you were looking for a job, how did you find out about the companies you could work for?
That's a really good question. Thank you for that. So I'd say in my undergraduate degree as a microbiologist, there were only 12 of us in my cohort. So it was a very niche, a very small group. There were only two real opportunities to conduct oil field or conduct microbiological PhDs at the university at the time. And one of them I was shortlisted for, but when I thought, actually, I'd like to go into industry, get some experience in industry, I it was really looking around on, you go to the standard places like the job websites, the kind of indeed.co.uk and things like that, but also there can be postings within institutes that say, okay, this academic group has funding from this industry sponsor, and they are actually looking for a junior project officer, or they're looking for a junior lab tech, or someone to do 2 weeks work experience. It's those I always kind of look at work experience kind of favorably now that I work in industry, but also at the time I thought, do I want to spend 2 weeks of my summer holidays to go there to do this? And it can really change your life. And I think going to those opening up those opportunities is really valuable. So there are lots of different avenues, whether it's the traditional job websites online, but also within academia, there's a lot of jobs circulating. I know that we have at University of Manchester, I get quite a few emails about them. But also things even like LinkedIn. People reach out to people on LinkedIn quite regularly these days, and that's another source of connecting with potential job opportunities.
Yeah. There's a message from Craig Dish, who's the departmental chair, and says, thank you so much for a cogent, insightful presentation. So that's I'm sure we all echo that one, but thanks for posting that, Craig. Tommaso, is there a specific skill that you found the most challenging or the most difficult to acquire when you transition from academia to industry?
That's a very good question. I think to go back on it, I think I have always been a yes person, whether it's kind of trying to take on as much as I can. It's something I still have to pull myself up on at the moment. And I think that's it sounds like one of those answers that you would give. What's your strength? What's your weakness in a job interview? And you always give a weakness, which can be seen as like a slight strength to some. But I think, yeah, working on not taking on too much, not trying to please everybody, because if you take on too much, the kind of as that video showed, not taking the time out to recharge and reset ultimately leads to things potentially going wrong, and long-term dissatisfaction is something I think we're all going to be working for quite a few years. So let's make sure what we're doing, we are all enjoying what we're doing. And I think those times out, so we don't neglect personal life, and neglecting mental health is really key to make sure we keep that long-term satisfaction in whatever we choose to do.
Yeah, very, very wise words, Matt. From Chun Hei Ho, when did you start to think that you have already mastered the 10 skills you mentioned?
Well, it might come across like that, but I'm afraid that I certainly haven't mastered them. I think going back, I think it links quite nicely with the previous question, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'd say that being brutally honest, I'm not natural. I don't feel fully comfortable giving whether it's video presentations or delivering technical talks at an event with 500 attendees. But you only get better at these things by doing more of them, and everything is experience driven, I would say, in life. And so even from a networking point of view, that my as you can tell, it's one of my favorite not words, but yeah, that network, those interactions with people, kind of, you're going to an event by yourself and it's just going and introducing yourself to a group of people is it seemed very alien to me many years ago, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you feel. So I think, yeah, I'm always learning on all 10 of these. And I think if anyone told you that they'd mastered all of them, I wouldn't trust them entirely, put it that way. But no, we're all in the same boat and we're all moving in the same direction, I would say.
Yeah, great. So there's a question from Isaac. He's had to leave, but he says, a question I will leave to the audience: how would you address persuading a business case to a line manager for training, either on a topic or piece of analytical equipment as an ECR?
Yeah, I guess that's a good one. So I think if you've got a keen early careers researcher who is showing initiative, I think that's a really good start. And if they're saying, I found this training, obviously it comes back to what we have up here, budget management. I think from that line manager, they are constantly looking at budgets and they're trying to weigh up, this training could be useful, but if it's £5,000 for the person to attend a 2-day workshop, the payout, what's the return on investment? And so I think if you start to have some of those hurdles, there's always room for negotiation. It's like, well, can I work a bit more, or can I look for grant funding to subsidize this training? Are there any grants out there, or can I subsidize it with grant funding and maybe some money from my own pocket because I can see the benefit? This is what I really want to go to. So I think they were absolutely right saying building that really strong business case is vital to convince someone who's ultimately holding the purse strings to understand that you are committed to that cause and that group. And yeah, there's always a way around it. Just pushing people. It's just knowing which buttons to press for certain people is key, I'd say.
Mm. Niam Faulkner, thanks for a great talk, Matt. Would you recommend presenting a PhD as a job on a CV, perhaps through a skill-based CV, using some of the key skills you presented and evidencing them?
I think so. I think there's a lot to be said for CVs, and over my time at Rawwater, I've seen lots of different ways that people present CVs. I think always keeping it 2 pages minimum is key. And I think when it comes to key line items, whatever's the most recent thing you've done, if you can demonstrate this is where I've been for the last 3, 5, 10 years, and these are the key skills that I've acquired, and this is how you can demonstrate them, I think is absolutely vital. I think from the PhD point of view, sometimes, depending on where you're up to in your career, some people can just have that as a single line item. But until you step back and you think, actually, I've acquired all of these skills as part of that PhD, I need to make more of a show and dance about it, I think absolutely go for it. And I think it shows to a potential employer that you have obviously not only researched the company and the topic area that they work in, but you've also understood that they probably will want someone who has experience of budget and time management and critical thinking and networking, things like that. I think it's always don't undersell yourself, put it that way. That's what I would always say.
Okay, so the last question we're going to take is from Pata Baram. Thank you for a very good presentation. I have a question. What do the industry hiring managers look for in ECRs of the same field applying for jobs?
Okay, that's a very good question. I think some of the opening questions that, for example, from my experiences, have those early career researchers, have they studied, have they looked into and investigated what the company is, what does the company do, who are its potential client base, and ultimately what you can add to the company. It's not a one-way street. It's not they're just looking for anyone. It's you will be able to offer something unique that not very many other people will be able to, even if you have the same qualifications, I would say. If you have 2 people with the same qualification, they are two separate people to be dealt with separately. And it's understanding when you're working in teams and you're working on from that early discussions with respect to communication, is how does the person communicate, and how do they show their strengths in that. And I always appreciate it's a very short time period, a lot of time when it comes to interviews. So I think, yeah, examples of how you've dealt with some of these skills, I think is vital. And it's just pulling out, it's championing yourself in front of those potential managers.
Matt, that was wonderful. Really value your advice and experience, and being so honest and open with us as well. And thank you for everybody for putting up so many questions as well. That was wonderful. So before we end the call, I'd just like to advertise the next presentations that we're going to have in this virtual series. Yes, so Matt was the first person to start off. And then we have a series of talks. Many of these are analytical. What we want to do is to share our knowledge and experience with you. Maybe you're thinking of using these analytical techniques for your research. So the next one will be on the ion probe. Then we've got one on XRD and XIS techniques, an insightful one on asbestos and how this crops up in our everyday life and how we deal with it. There's another one in the new year, 2025, January, on the SEM. And there's another one about the NAIF scheme application, carbonate dating, and ICP analysis. And if you have ideas about what you would like a presentation on, then please do contact us as well, and we'll see if we can host something that the whole community will benefit from as well. So just the last slide, Kevin, please. If you're interested in the Mineralogical Society, you want to come on board, you kind of like what we're doing, you think you can help join our community, then please go to our website, minsoc.org/membership, and you can find out about what we have on offer. The rates, they're very low rates for joining a learned society, and there's sorts of benefits that you can gain as well, such as access to bursaries, the awards, free subscription to Elements magazine, discount on books, etc. So I thank you all for joining the call today, and we look forward to seeing you for the next presentation in the Skills and Techniques course. So thank you very much, everybody.